It's February 25th, and I have a spicy take on what's going on here with Ukraine and Russia. Me being from a Slavic descent, I think I have a unique perspective on what's going on right now, and I'm going to share that with you and what's going on with the markets and what I think is going to happen um, after I do the review of the account. Speaking of the account, it's been getting slaughtered, but even though it was down 13,000 or more earlier in the day, like right in the morning, the account recovered and actually ended in the positive territory of $3,000 or so. So without further ado, here it is. Here's the account. I'm sitting at 172,900, almost 173 here, and the account was as low as 157,800 at one point. So a huge run. I held on to my positions throughout the day, except maybe like one, and then it recovered. But I'm still obviously very far in the negative territory. 1 week performance is negative 14,000 or 7.5%. I'm losing to the markets, I think, at the moment. 3 months is negative 11%. 1 year, I'm still up 18%. Maybe I'm not losing to the markets. I'm not sure. Well, why don't we take a look? Let's make that comparison. What's the worst number here? The week one or the month? Let's go with the month, 11.17. If I go to the S&P 500, how about we use the SPY as a proxy? The 1 month is 0.73, see, much better. 3 months, 7.86. The 1 week, only minus 2.6. So I'm losing to the S&P 500 at the moment. But I'm not discouraged. Actually, I forgot to check the year. So 1 year, 18%. Oops. And SPY, 1 year, 9.12. So I'm still winning on the year, year over year. But I mean, recently I've been doing a lot worse. Nasdaq is dropping even further, but let's go through the account so I can talk about Russia and Ukraine a little bit. By the way, if you didn't know, I don't know if you've been living under a rock or whatever, but Russia invaded Ukraine. So here are the positions on the right. Apple call that's going to expire worthless pretty soon, tomorrow. I bought that for like $20, so it's no big deal. So I'm gonna just scroll real briefly through the account, and you can just pause the video at any point to try to figure out the exact positions that I'm holding. All the information is gonna be right here on the left. So just look through that if you're interested in the account and the positions. All the movement is gonna be on the right. It shows that in dollar terms and percentage for the day. So that's how it's moved today, the 25th. And these are the equity positions on the right here. You can see Apple, EBIX, JD. Again, you can pause the player at any moment to try to figure this out if you're interested. I'm going to go to the account tab in a second. Before that, I want to show you PayPal. PayPal was down almost 6%, all the way down at 94.86, and it managed to rally like more than $10 to 105, and it's even up after hours when things dropped. So 105.57, I even got scared, and midway through this, I had sold the call for 108, and I actually removed that call. I bought it back. I sold it for 20, and I bought it back for 40 because I was afraid that maybe PayPal is going to go over 108 tomorrow, and it could. So if it does, I'm going to be selling 100 shares at 107, but I want to keep holding. But PayPal is very interesting. I'm going to go to the account tab right now and show you the overall position of the account. I have a high amount of margin right now, which I, very sorry to say that I do, but I have it. So it's 37.75% of the account, 104,000. I'm paying about $160, $170 per month for that. And then equity position is 172. So I'm getting pretty levered, and I don't know. I mean, I usually get more levered as the account goes down because I want to take advantage of sell opportunities, but I feel pretty uncomfortable. At some point, if this continues, this meaning the sharp sell-off in the markets, I might have to start selling equity in lieu of leap options. I had to do that during the 2020 March episode, and I really don't want to do it again, but I will do it. And I'll keep trying to catch that knife all the way down. as far as it goes, basically, which is a dangerous thing, but you know, only have one life. So this is the strategy I've decided on. All right, now it's time for some Ukraine and Russia talk. So I don't know how many of you know this, but Ukraine actually used to be part of Russia for a very long time, and in fact, Kiev, which is the capital of Ukraine, is part of it's a central point in Slavic history. Now, my name is Slav, so like I know a little bit about Slavic history, and I'm 25% Russian, 75% Bulgarian, but my name is Slavic, obviously. So that it's that city itself it's very important, and whenever the problems came to be in the Soviet Union, and when it fell apart in the late 80s, early 90s, Ukraine broke off and became its own country. However, it hasn't really done that well. I mean, Russia hasn't done that well either in the last 30 some years, but Ukraine has done worse. And we're gonna look at a couple of figures to back that up. So what I'm trying to say here is that I don't think it's a bad thing if Ukraine falls under Russian control. I know that sounds horrible, and I know that a lot of people are fighting for their lives, and a lot of people are dying, and it's really bad from a human perspective. And but if people were not nationalistic and just try to make a rational decision, I think Ukraine joining Russia was actually going to be a good thing for the country and for the people in there economically. So feel free to downvote this report, whatever you want to do. But that's how I feel from an economic standpoint. It's obviously bad that there's fighting going on, and even one person dead is too many. So human casualty should be avoided all the time at all cost. But if there was a diplomatic solution and Ukraine fell under Russian control, I think would have been the best outcome possible without any fighting. Kind of like the opposite of what happened in Afghanistan. That I know I'm going a little political and world politics here, but in Afghanistan it's kind of like the opposite. There was no fighting happening, and the country was handed off to like people that no one wants to see in control of that territory. But in Russia, it's kind of the opposite, right? It's people are fighting for perhaps a better steward of the country than country does at the moment. So I compare this more to a civil war than an invasion, because I think what's happening right now is something more similar to what happened in the U.S. during the the Civil War. So I think it's an internal conflict, basically. In the Civil War, the South wanted to secede and the North did not want to secede, so they fought a war to try to reunify the country. I think that's kind of what Russia is doing right now. It's trying to reunify its country, and it's using political tactics, and probably some people would argue dirty tactics in order to do that, to get enough political will in its country in order to invade Ukraine, because the people in power in Ukraine are not going to want to give up their entire country. I was under the impression that he's probably going to just try to get a part of Ukraine, because there is a big Polish ish population in Ukraine as well as Russian. So I was thinking that the final outcome is going to be kind of a division of the country along some kind of predetermined borders, where the the more Russianish population would go to Russia, and the rest of it would either remain Ukraine or create a new country altogether or something like that. I don't know what the final outcome is going to be. Maybe the entire region of Ukraine is going to rejoin Russia, but either way, I think it's more like a civil war, fighting for power rather than an invasion of a foreign country. Okay, people in Ukraine speak Russian. They're basically Russians, and their culture is very, very similar. It's identical, basically. It's like New York and New Jersey. I mean, it's very close. All right, so compared to, let's say, New York and China, right? Totally different. Okay, so here I have some statistics. Just real briefly, I pulled up the GDP of Ukraine. This is GDP per capita, actually, per capita. So, ever since the Iron Curtain fell, and 89 or whatever it was, 87, 89, I think. A lot of the ex-Soviet territories became independent, and I just want to point out the GDP per capita of Ukraine since that period. So you can see how it's actually, declined. It's three-fourths of what it was during that tumultuous period, right? And then it kept falling from 1988 and on, all the way until the currency crisis in the late 90s. Russian ruble and obviously my home country Bulgaria fell into the hyperinflationary status. So there was a lot of economic destruction there in the Eastern Bloc. But after that, it kept on rising. It never actually, it plateaued, in 2006-07. And then it never actually went further than that. So the country has been very stagnant, and its GDP per capita is lower than it was back in 1988, which is crazy. Now, if we look at Russia, you can see that Russia's actually made some improvements since that period. Here's the inflationary period in the late 90s, and ever since then, the rise has been slower but steady. And even though in this latest year here, the GDP fell because of obviously all kinds of viral issues around the world, it's been going up steadily. And I want to point out that it's actually 4 times higher. The GDP per capita in Russia is 4 times higher than Ukraine. And that's a good measure to measure economies in, is GDP per capita. It just means like how much wealth is in there per person. It doesn't tell you much about the mean. Okay, there could be a lot of wealth concentrated at the top, but there's still wealth in the country. The country is much richer, and there's probably, it's a good bet that the living standard is higher, and there's just more economic activity happening relative to the other countries. So Russia is better off. We can say roughly 4 times better off than Ukraine. So if I want to give a little bit of an example here. So when Bulgaria got introduced and taken into the EU, that came with a lot of perks. Okay, it came with the perks of joining a bigger economy, free inter-country travel. There was a lot of more investment into the country. So when I went back to Bulgaria recently, a few years back, the country had basically changed. I mean, it's a whole new European, like it was a proper European standard country. I couldn't believe it. It was clean everywhere. People were professional, nice. Like there was a positive culture change. A lot of people were making more money. There weren't many people complaining like they used to back in the day, and everybody had food on the table. There wasn't that much poverty, even though some people still complaining grass is always greener. From objective standpoint, I can tell 15 years difference that the country was way better off now joining a bigger economy and with a currency tied to the euro than it would have been with a free floating lev or whatever currency they're probably going to use. So I think something similar is going to happen to Ukraine, even though it's painful right now. If they join a bigger, better economy, the living standard for the person inside Ukraine is going to actually rise, and I do believe that. And that's my controversial take, and I think that the country is better off for it. I know that the means that this is happening does not justify the result, and I disagree with that. Obviously, I would not have forced war on anyone, and obviously, just like I said, even one life lost is not worth it. So I don't think the means are right, but the result is probably going to be beneficial. So anyway, I think that's going to be good for Ukraine, economically speaking, eventually, and good for the world, because we're going to have one stronger country one more stronger region economically in the world that can contribute better to the world economy. And just like mergers and acquisitions, there can be some explored efficiencies, especially if the culture is correct. Like if one company is acquiring another company, and they already have the same culture, right, of doing things around in the company, is going to be a much better fit. And they all spoke the same language. Let's say they all use the same software. I mean, right? You already have people on board. It's kind of like it's an instant benefit. So I think of it from that standpoint. I know it's a little bit optimistic, especially given what we see on the news and all this loss of life and tragedy out there. But I hope, and I'm also of the opinion that there's a good chance that this comes out positive for everybody involved who happens to survive the turmoil. So anyway, that's my controversial take. I actually bought 100 shares of the Russian market today. Let me see if I can show you here. There we go. RSX 100 shares. I'm actually up on it. You can see $98, 6.54% since I bought it. It might still go down, but Russian market is extremely undervalued for good reason at the moment, since there's going to be sanctions. But one thing I just also wanted to mention about Russian market is that it seems like the sanctions are not that bad. I mean, I heard that Germany is stopping the Nordic 2 line, which is going to be limiting the amount of business basically they're going to be doing with Russia. But I don't think they're cutting off the imports from Russia altogether. So there's still the natural gas is too valuable for Europe for them to cut that off. And I just saw somebody talking about how Russia's not even cut off from SWIFT, and SWIFT is the international money exchange system, the way that countries manage to make big transactions and things like that. So if that's not happening, if they're not cut off from SWIFT, like, how are you really punishing this move? So everybody's just kind of, it seems like pretending about that they're doing something about it, but nothing's really being done. But anyway, I hope this goes as smoothly as possible, and no one from here on gets harmed in the process, which I know is wishful thinking, and I know we're going to see some more casualties and death. And I don't mean to offend, by the way, any Ukrainian nationals out there that fight for their country and they believe in their country and they really want independence. They don't like Putin. Putin, however one you pronounce it. I wouldn't want him to lead me either. I'm happy that I'm in the United States. I wouldn't want to be in the Russian regime, but I recognize that the Russian regime is better than what Ukraine's been having for the last 4 years. Not 4 years. For the last 30 some years. So I don't mean to offend. I wouldn't want somebody interfering in my country's meddlings as well. But if I look at it from an objective standpoint, without any nationalistic feelings, I think it's actually a positive development economically. So that's my controversial take. You can hate me in the comments if you want to, and let me know what you think about the situation. Or you can give me insight or tell me why I'm wrong. I know I'm wrong from a moral standpoint. That's obvious. But from an economic standpoint, I want you to tell me why I'm wrong about this. All right, I'm going to end it right here. Let me know. Peace.